It's been many decades, but you still remember the taste, texture, and a few gimmicks of Halloween treats from your childhood. The best treats were, of course, the full-sized candy bars you bragged about to your siblings and friends, while the worst you couldn't even trade and went untouched until your parents eventually tossed them. But every so often, mixed in with the chocolate bars and lollipops, were a few surprises. Here are the ones we loved and the ones we hated. Be sure to stick around for the last one because some treats weren't all candy. Do you remember your candy going through the inspection? First and foremost, your parents would have made you spread all your goodies on the kitchen table and inspected them for any signs of tampering, looking for needles, razor blades, or even poison. If they didn't accompany you and saw it with their own eyes, anything unwrapped or homemade went straight to the trash. Homemade cookies and popcorn balls were a nice treat if your mom trusted the neighbor. If you got an apple, it might as well go straight to the trash when you have plenty of candy to last you a week. If you got the little boxes of sun-made raisins, it wasn't the end of the world. You knew you could trade them if you really didn't want them.
Don't eat anything that doesn't look right. If it looks funny, it might not be so funny if you ate it.
Do you remember these Halloween staples? There was no more controversial Halloween candy than candy corn, and there was plenty of it. These waxy cones managed to taste both sweet and flavorless. How is that possible? Not to be confused with Hershey's Kisses, those orange and black peanut butter kisses were either good or bad, depending on when they were bought. If they came straight from a store, this old-fashioned candy tasted as it should and was easy to chew. If you got a bunch that's been sitting around for years, you immediately spat them out. Here's another controversial one, circus peanuts. They were orange, squishy, and oddly familiar. We bet you can use these chalky marshmallows to pack your next delivery.
Here you go.
Do you remember these hard candies? They were individually wrapped candies. Each pack of Charms candy came in 8 assorted fruit flavors. You swirled them around in your mouth until you chewed them, then you reached for another one. If you managed to separate the plastic wrapper from the candy, Jolly Rancher sticks were worth the wait and delivered intense flavor. Which was your favorite? Was it apple? Strawberry? How about watermelon? Lemon heads were a real test for your taste buds. If you managed to get through the distinct sour lemon taste that made your face scrunch up like a prune, you were treated to the lemony sweet satisfaction. They looked weird, you weren't quite sure what they were, but you were told it's root beer barrel candy. Okay, that sounds pretty good. Still skeptical, you tried it. Till this day, you're still unsure if they tasted anything like root beer. Do you remember chewing on these gum brands? Big Red, Spearmint, Double Mint, and Juicy Fruit chewing gums all had big flavor, but you couldn't blow a bubble even though you tried. They were prime candidates for trading. Bazooka Joe was the rock-hard pink square that came with a comic strip, but you'd still be hard-pressed to blow a bubble. The jokes, if you were lucky, were good for a chuckle, but most of the time they made you groan. Chiclets were white, tiny squares of gum. If you placed 2 of them under your upper lip, it made you look like Mr. Wilson from Dennis the Menace. They started out promising with that satisfying crunch, but within a few seconds, you were left wondering why you even bothered. If you got some Bubble Yum or Bubblicious, you could blow some serious bubbles. It wasn't chocolate, but they were something brown. Even well before Gen X, no shortage of caramel chews that clung to your teeth. There were caramel cubes, which were individually wrapped squares. You risked losing a crown or bridge. Mary Jane's came in yellow wrappers made of peanut butter and molasses. You were convinced people ate these to survive the Depression. If you couldn't get enough caramel, how about having it on a stick? Sugar Daddy was a caramel lollipop that you could at least handle and keep from getting stuck on your teeth. Finally, we have Tootsie Rolls. They were the mystery chews staple of Halloween that nobody could quite figure out. Were they chocolate? Were they caramel? Who knows? They weren't amazing, but they weren't terrible either, making them perfect if you were desperate.
So oily, the candy, that it seeps through the wrapper, so the wrappers themselves are extremely oily.
You had plenty of lollipops, but do you remember these Lollipop Gimmicks? Do you remember the commercials with the cartoon owl and the kid asking, "How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?" Did it make you want one? It was a traditional lollipop with a Tootsie Chew in the center. Yes, that made it much more acceptable to eat. Who didn't love Blow Pops? The lollipop with a gum center. That moment when you broke through to the center felt like discovering buried treasure, even if the gum was kinda gnarly trying to get it off the stick.
1, 2, 3.
How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know.
Were you suspicious of this black candy? These pill-like candies looked like drugs, which was fitting because they tasted like medicine. Good and Plenty were black licorice covered in a hard candy coating. Whose bright idea was this? At least there was no disguising black licorice. If you tasted it once, you know what to expect. You either loved licorice or were searching for that one friend who would trade you for it. Twizzlers had the same plasticky texture, but unlike licorice, it was not unpleasant to eat. It was fun to gnaw on these strawberry-flavored rope snacks. Do you remember more candy that looked like medicine?
Twizzlers make me very happy. Twizzlers make your mouth so very happy.
Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. There were these pastel, chalky tablets that resembled antacids, Tylenol tablets, or communion wafers. The old-school originals were the Necco wafers, which featured unusual flavors such as clove, cinnamon, wintergreen, and licorice. We can't imagine anyone missing these. Then we have Smarties. Remember, they were tiny tablets wrapped in cellophane. Next came Sweet Tarts, which had the same flavors as Pixie Sticks: cherry, grape, lemon, lime, and orange. Finally, we have Bottle Caps. They were soda flavors: cola, cherry, grape, orange, and root beer.
It's like it says here, the soda pop candies, each one has a very distinct flavor. Bottle caps have been around for a long time and it's a very iconic candy.
Would you consider these bad candies? Jawbreakers lived up to their billing. It was the ultimate test of your patience. You swirled these oversized candy wrecking balls in your mouth. As each minute passed, you tasted all the different flavors: tangy, sweet, and even sour. You asked your friend what color it was. For what felt like hours, you were tempted to chew on them, hence the name, Jawbreakers. Butterscotch Discs hard candies were what every grandma had in a crystal dish, and getting them for Halloween felt like she had raided her living room candy stash. They weren't terrible, just old-fashioned in a way that made you feel like you were eating candy from World War II.
This college student says she chomped down on a giant jawbreaker and, well, it broke her jaw in 2 places.
Did you know you could eat wax? We doubt anyone handed them out to trick-or-treaters, but there seemed to be at least one kid with oversized wax lips. Created by Tootsie Roll's Whack-A-Wax brand, they are made from food-grade paraffin wax. If you ask us, they remind us of the Rolling Stones lips logo. The mustache and fangs wax you've seen were recent additions to the Whack-A-Wax lineup. Do you remember the wax bottles with juice in them? They were called Nickel Nips. You bit off the top and drank the flavored syrup like you were taking a swig from a flask. Believe it or not, the wax was edible just like the wax lips. If you did eat the wax, you must leave a comment.
As if my lips weren't big enough already.
What were some of your favorite Chewy candies? If you got these on Halloween, they were the holy grail of candy. Skittles, with their hard candy shells, have an intense fruity flavor and a chewy texture. Their vibrant colors had you popping them like pills. A few of you might have tried this new candy called Mentos. This tasty fruit-flavored mint had a hard candy shell and a unique chewy texture that was easy to eat. Who doesn't remember the commercials? Starbursts were perfectly soft and chewy, and the flavor was also intense. Who didn't love the strawberry and cherry flavors? Laffy Taffy was also little squares of fruity goodness. Although their texture was slightly harder and chewier than Starburst, they were a solid find on Halloween. Like Bazooka Joe, they had jokes printed on the wrapper that could only amuse a kid. These red fish-shaped candies had a unique flavor that wasn't quite strawberry and wasn't quite cherry. Swedish Fish had the ideal chewy texture, neither too hard nor too soft. They are lingonberry flavored, and similar to cranberries found in Scandinavia.
Fruity little Skittles are fun to chew. Some for me and some for you.
Did you have any Chewy Nightmares? At first glance, you were excited because you got a full-sized candy bar. If you have never had a Charleston Chew, it's a vanilla taffy bar covered in chocolate, dating back to the Prohibition era. The wrapper suggested freezing it, but you were in for a jaw workout with the crunching and taffy. Did it even taste good? These did live up to their name. Now and laters were rock-hard square candy. The now was you plop one into your mouth, and you had to wait until the candy absorbed enough saliva to soften it and chew the later. It was definitely a lesson in patience. The fruit flavors were decent if you can get past the waiting experience. This dried up honey candy was like eating sweetened brick that had been left in the cupboard for far too long. It was so hard to chew. Bit of honey might be a good treat to help a child take out a loose tooth.
Things happen with bit of honey, a bit of peanut butter. Goes a long, long way.
Have you ever had candy disguised in chocolate? If you were disappointed with getting Sun-made raisins, at least Raisinets had you covered. Who doesn't love chocolate-covered raisins? They had that distinctive crunch followed by chocolate. Whoppers were chocolate-covered malted milk balls. The taste and texture were something you had to think twice about if you liked it. If you liked sugar daddies, how about in bite-sized form covered in chocolate? Sugar babies made eating caramel more palatable if you didn't want to eat caramel straight up. Let's flip it around. Of course, M&Ms and peanut M&Ms are classics, known for their candy shell. However, if you have these knockoffs, you might wonder what they are. Sixlets were tiny chocolate balls with candy shells. If their size wasn't disappointing enough, they only came 10 in a pack.
The M&M's man, and he adds a lot of love to make it all taste good. The milk chocolate melts in your mouth, not in your hand.
This candy was so sticky and sweet. You certainly won't see any kids today with these treats. Pixie Sticks were colored powdered candy in a paper straw. You'd tear open those paper tubes and pour the contents directly into your mouth, which would have you looking like an addict. The rush was immediate and intense. Your face puckered as the sourness hit, then followed by the sweetness, which had you licking your fingers.
Oh, that sugar. It was a little bit tart. That was great.
Have you ever had Halloween treats that doubled as toys? If there was a way to make chalky candy fun, well, the geniuses at Fleer found a way. Remember Mr. Bones candy coffins? They were filled with candy bones you could piece together like a puzzle before eating them. Who cares what they tasted like? You had a cool container toy. Tops had their own garbage candy. The plastic garbage can was filled with candy shaped like trash, fish bones, old shoes, dog bones, and soda bottles. You loved eating the garbage, even if the candy inside was pretty standard. Speaking of toys, we doubt anyone gave out Pez dispensers. Perhaps you got the refill candy, which excited you just as much.
And then you open up your little coffin, and then you can free Mr. Bones from his little casket and try to put him back together again.
They might have been treats, but they were not candy. You knocked on the most uncreative home, or they didn't have time to buy candy, but they wanted to give you something. How about a dollar bill or loose change? At least you could make a deposit in your piggy bank, or take that money and buy yourself the candy you actually wanted. You knock on the door and they give you a pair of toothpaste and a toothbrush? Receiving it was a passive-aggressive message from a dentist who saw Halloween as an opportunity to promote their business. Depending on who you are, some of you appreciated the dental hygiene. Most of you would much rather have the candy. There you have it. Were there any we missed? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, watch the Gen X Halloween Kids Today Will Never Understand.